Hit it twice.
Hi, everybody. This is Max with Max Financial Services, and thank you for joining us for another Planning Tuesday. Today, we have a really, really awesome topic, and I'm delighted to be joined by an expert in this field, attorney Ruth Carter. Hello.
Hello.
So today's topic really is something that I was thinking about a lot, and I've actually had more and more people come and ask me about it, which is planning for digital assets. So as part of financial planning, everybody pretty much thinks about, hey, estate planning is one of those things, which is typical question, hey, what happens to my money? What happens to my stuff when I'm no longer around? And for the most part, this really wasn't a big issue. And over the last couple of years, it really has become a bigger point of contention with some people, and it will absolutely be a much bigger issue in the future, considering that 45% of 65-year-old plus have a Facebook page. Mm-hmm. So the question is, what happens to all of those photos, all of those videos, and everything else along those lines? So I guess just kind of set the agenda a little bit. I guess, what do we define as digital assets? And Ruth, you can chime in here if I'm missing something. But I was thinking something as simple as could be like your PayPal account, your frequent flyer miles, which people have been more accustomed to. And then going to, for say, something a little bit more difficult to talk about, maybe like your Bitcoin account, if you have any Bitcoins, any other digital currencies people might have. How about even like in-app, like iTunes app purchases, or if you purchase movies on Amazon? Well, it's not as simple as handing off your record collection to your grandkids anymore, I assume. And then even something as simple as your YouTube videos. And then to kind of throw a wrench into it, well, what if you're one of these big mega YouTube stars and you have money that's coming in from there? So what did I miss?
You seem to cover a lot of it. You have to think of what did we used to keep on in like physical, tangible property, like photographs, videos, money. And that's all now digital. All of that is still property. And so you have to think about, what do I actually own? Because there's also been a shift as we've become more of a digital world. A lot of times when people think that they're purchasing a thing, they're actually not. They're only getting a license. So you have to think about, what do I actually own? Can I transfer it to somebody when I die? And yeah, think also about things like your emails and all of your social media properties, passwords, things like that. And have you set yourself up properly so that your digital afterlife will be managed the way that you want it to be?
Well, you touched upon a really good question. But legally, who owns it? So, I mean, for example, if you took a photo, it's your photo and you took it. But what happens to it if you put it on Facebook or if it's on your Google Drive account?
Right. So, and, every time I do any of these types of interviews, I have to always say, even though I am a licensed attorney, I am not your attorney. So I'm only here today to provide general legal information. This is not a substitute for legal advice. If you came here looking for legal advice, go hire somebody.
And I'll put in my quick disclosure. None of this is investment advice or tax advice. So please make sure you contact somebody. This is just general in nature. We're here really to educate everybody.
Right. We're going to give you as much information to make you all very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
Have fun. Run with scissors, kids. Yeah. Sorry. So where were we?
Legally, who owns it?
Oh, so that's the answer to every legal question is always going to start with, it depends. Okay. So I would go back to where you made the purchase and look at those terms of service that you didn't read when you made the purchase and go and review it. Because if you only bought a license versus actually owning the item, it may say that this license terminates upon your death or the end, or if the company goes under. Okay. So a lot of times what people think they own, they actually don't. But if it's something that you created and shared with the world, like you brought up, posting a photo to Facebook or someplace else, a lot of times those terms of service say that user retain copyright ownership to that image, but by posting it online, you give that platform permission to use it. So you still own it. Under the US, copyright exists past your death. If we're talking about a photograph or a blog post or something created by an individual, the copyright lasts for the life of the author plus 70 years. So if there is still money to be made, let's say off your YouTube channel, you have to think about who's going to collect those royalties. And if you don't designate who that person is, the laws of your state will decide for you.
Okay.
So that's what happens if you die without a will.
So for assets where you really truly don't have ownership into it, and it just could be something as simple as your account, how detailed should people get in terms of including it in their estate plan?
It's a really good question. And I would say for the minimum you want to have for your estate plan is designate who you want to manage your digital afterlife. So who is in charge of going into your profiles and posting that you've passed away, and do you want them to be continued or terminated? Or like on Facebook, they can turn it into some kind of,
I think it was like a memorial page.
There we go.
Okay.
I was reaching for that term. Something like that. But to do that, somebody needs to have the password to both your computer and all your accounts. Okay. And so if you are someone who uses something like LastPass that holds all your passwords, you only have to give that person 2 passwords, one to your computer, and the one to your LastPass, and maybe the password to your phone.
Okay. So that's for Facebook. I mean, do any of the accounts, as far as you know, do any of the social media sites or do any of the platforms, do they let anybody transfer ownership? So for example, maybe like for email or something along those lines?
I would wonder in a lot of those situations, how would they even know? I mean, like, how many people have Gmail accounts? Would somebody at Google really notice that suddenly that, that the user is no longer signing in from Texas, but they're signing in from New York because that's where your parents live and they've taken over your account? Do they care? Probably not, as long as you're not using it to commit fraud. So, when in doubt, apply logic. If it was a situation where you are, accessing someone's Bitcoin accounts and something like that, that may be, and Bitcoin is something I know enough to be very, very dangerous. And I know the U.S. just decided that Bitcoin is a commodity, not currency. Correct. So that's its own. That's actually getting into more of your world than mine. But so you have to think of it like, okay, who's going to get you? Who gets your Bitcoin when you die? And I hope you picked a financial planner who actually knows what Bitcoin is and how that works.
If it's still around in 5-10 years, so we'll see about that. And you actually touched upon it. It was right on my next question, right on the list, the privacy aspect about it. So, I mean, we can have something simple.
You disappeared.
All right, so if it still doesn't work, I will have to play with it, and it will be right on the phone, so I apologize for that.
That's okay.
All right, so you hit it right next on my list, which was from the privacy aspect about it. People worry about their privacy, and oftentimes your spouse might not even have access to your email or what your password is. When you pass away, I mean, what if some people actually if you don't want others to see what was going on in your email or in any other of those type of accounts? Now, if, for example, if you lived with your spouse for 30 years or so and there's really no secrets, but as Gmail has been around, and I was looking at it, I've had my Gmail account for about 10 or 15 years, which predates my spouse. It's like, well, what if there's stuff that people don't want others to see, should that be included in the estate plan, or should that just be kind of like just forgotten about and that's it?
I think you need to look at each person needs to look at their own situation and think about what happens if I get hit by a bus today.
Yeah.
And who's going to have access. I know a lot of us have that one friend who knows like that there's a drawer in your bedroom to clean out before your parents get to it, in the event that you die.
Yeah.
If you have a situation where there are accounts that you want to disappear after you die, I can think of, one of two ways to go about that. Either keep them off of like your LastPass and all that, so that if whoever takes over your digital afterlife, that they never find it, so that those accounts just kind of go dormant and you just go poof. But if you want somebody to actually go in and delete things, okay, number one, that makes me wonder, what are you doing that you have to have a secret life? Not judging, but just kind of curious. But do you need to have like a friend who you designate to be your kind of like your executor of your digital life, to say, okay, who gets control over which accounts and which ones are just deleted, or just, keep this from my parents or my spouse or my kids, or whatever your reasons are. As long as, I'm hoping that no one's like covering up, the fact that they're like a big mobster. But,
exactly.
But if you just have a hobby that you don't want people to know about, and there's a digital side to it, you may want to have a buddy you trust to keep their mouth shut while you're alive and take care of it after you die.
Okay. So actually, you brought up a legalese term, so I guess let's explain it. So you mentioned your digital executor. So for people who don't know, an executor is somebody who handles your estate, distributes it upon your passing, who is different from your trustee. So sometimes that could be the same person. So I guess two questions for you. Should your executor and trustee be the same person? And the second question of it, as it relates to our talk today, should your executor for your digital assets be the same executor who is dealing with the rest of your estate?
I think it can be. I would want to appoint someone as my digital executor, or in Arizona, we call it your personal representative, who is tech savvy enough to handle your accounts. So for me, the person I would appoint as my personal representative for my finances is probably different than the person I would appoint to take care of my digital assets. And probably would be like, hey, regular executor, I have these digital assets, tell so-and-so to take care of it. And these are their instructions. Don't worry. I know you can't understand them, but he will. And just leave it at that. And because hopefully, for now, my executor is my parents. And so I don't think they could get into my computer if they wanted to. I don't think they can use a smartphone without help. So it's kind of funny to like I can hand them my phone and be like, here, do you know how to unlock this? And look at it and go, no. So for them, asking them to manage my online life, which includes several social media platforms they've never been on and 2 blogs, no, that would be a disaster, versus having one of my best friends who works in social media, who fixes my computer when I break it, say, hey, take care of all this stuff. Make sure you back up my blogs, because I probably haven't in about 7 years. And this is what happens with everything.
So the question with that is, obviously this is a new arena for a lot of people. Have the state laws caught up with digital assets, or are some states worse than others?
This is an area, since I don't work in estate planning, I haven't been super up to date on what's going on specifically in estate planning. I can tell you in general, the law is about 3 years behind technology most of the time. So, however, things like copyrights and general property laws still apply. It's just got to kind of have to, tweak your brain a little bit and go, okay, we're dealing with stuff in binary code instead of on paper, but the same principle applies. So it's not that hard to deal with it, but I think the issue is a lot of people don't realize that because a lot more people are creating content, and they are more active online, that there may be digital assets that they haven't accounted for or even thought about. And so you have to just kind of think all that through. And if when's the last time any of us like created a photo album, like like the kind like you open it's a book versus posted a photo online, so like who gets, but I bet a lot of people may want access to your Instagram account to see your photos, at least. And so how do you make sure that there can still be a beautiful photo display at your memorial if that's important to you, or just for people to have?
So do you treat assets differently, whether it's something as simple as an email account or a photo account versus something that might have more value, such as domain names or even a blog or YouTube account that brings revenue and money every month?
I guess I just look at it the same way I look at all estate planning, is when you look at your property, you have to think beyond just the contents of your home, but also the contents of your digital life, and think about, okay, what do I want to have happen if I own a domain? Whose job is it to make sure that that continues? And are you setting aside enough money for them to keep it going? So, that may be requiring us, creating a trust for your digital assets. If something requires a subscription service, and then with instructions of what you hope that they would do with it, or who gets the copyright to it. If the event that site the service no longer exists, let's say Instagram, decides to say, hey, in 30 days, we're shutting it down. Pull your photos because we're going to make them all disappear. Whose job is it to take care of your accounts? And is it a situation where you just want to give someone else the password and the login information and say, hey, just take over it and maintain it, versus do whatever you want with it? You're now the owner.
Yeah. So, at what point would it kind of make sense for people who are thinking ahead about it? So if something that may potentially bring more than a couple of dollars a month, at what point should they start thinking about it? Hey, you know what? It really is a business. So let's start thinking about it as an online business and either incorporate or file LLC, or even having something as just a tax certificate as a sole proprietorship. So people basically know, hey, it's a business. Let's treat it like a business, which in turn might make it a bit easier from the estate planning side down the road.
Yeah, I think at the second you decide I want to make money in this venture, LLC yourself. Now, if you're just a person and you post little videos of your dog on YouTube, maybe not. And if you just run ads that never make money, that's one thing. But the second you make a dime, or the second you're going to make the commitment to, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start a vlog with the hope that someday I can, quit my job and just do this full time. I actually helped someone do that this year. It's like, okay, you got to treat it like it's a legitimate business. I think part of it is psychologically, you have to remember, I'm a business person and act accordingly. You're not just a person with a hobby, because there are serious financial and legal implications when you are operating as a business. So if nothing else, you want to have an LLC, to limit your liability. So in the event that you get sued because of your YouTube channel, it's only the business assets that are on the line, not your home, your car, your stuff, your dog. And so that's when you want to at least have, one appointment with a lawyer to understand how do you set that up properly, one appointment with your financial planner or your accountant to understand how to set that up so that you have limited your liabilities and you understand the tax implications, including all the write-offs that come with starting a business. So there is an upside to it.
Absolutely.
So you just want to be an informed person if you are making money online, whether you are, selling your stuff through eBay or Amazon or running ads, and just so that you understand the lay of the land. And
so I guess the question would be, how receptive are a lot of the new media companies out there for looking at you as a business rather than looking at you just as an individual? So you mentioned eBay, Amazon. You can definitely open up a business account with those. Same thing if you're doing affiliate marketing, you can actually open up an affiliate marketing account as a business. But if you're putting up videos on YouTube and you're monetizing them that way, is Google and Facebook and others, are they okay looking at you? Can you register business accounts there?
As far as I can tell, yes.
Okay.
In my experience, which is both as a lawyer and an entrepreneur, the world takes you as seriously as you take yourself. So if you treat yourself like a business, present yourself as a business, jump through all the hoops that a business is supposed to do, the world will accept you as a business. So you create a business page on Facebook, a Google Plus account for businesses, a YouTube channel, and yeah, you differentiate between the business versus you, the person, if that's appropriate. Some people do, some people don't. But when it comes to like signing contracts and accepting money, that it's coming through the business. So, I'm an author. My work is on Amazon, but the check comes through the business. I almost never want anyone to write me a check personally. It's like, nope, make it to the company, because that's the clearinghouse before it ever touches me, the person, so that if the company gets sued, it's like, yeah, sure, go after the business, but.
And that'll be a topic for another Blab. So protecting yourself through incorporation. Yep. So it almost seems like it's time to read the terms of services for everything.
Yes, and if you are someone who operates a platform, have terms of service. If you go to geeklawfirm.com, you will see the most awesome terms of service I've ever written, because I wrote them for myself. So yeah, no, definitely, those are binding contracts, and I write them for clients all the time. And I will guarantee whoever wrote the terms of service did it in favor of themselves, not everybody else.
Exactly.
So they basically say, we want it all, and you probably get a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah. And it's funny. So we specialize in dealing with alternative and direct investments. And I was talking to a colleague of mine, and he's a CFA, very analytical person. And one of the things that keeps sticking in my head was, so his quote is, "What the big print giveth, the small print taketh away."
Oh my goodness, I love that.
So it's basically time to read it. And I'm not sure if anybody caught that episode of South Park when for the Apple terms of services, when it was Kyler Stanberg integrated into the human centipede for the new iPad. So all that because he didn't read the terms of services, and they mock him for the entire episode because he didn't read it and he hit the I agree button. So I guess that's a lesson for pretty much everybody. Let's talk a little bit more about your individual practice. What exactly are your areas of specialties? Area of expertise for people who don't know, and what do you see as the upcoming challenges in the digital planning world?
So, my areas of practice are business law, intellectual property, social media law, and flash mob law. I've been practicing law in Arizona for about 4 years now. And in terms of where I see things going, it's such a challenge, because on one side of my practice, I am trying to keep up with what everybody's doing in the social media space, knowing full well that the law is lagging years behind. So like, we're still dealing with a copyright law that was written primarily in the 1970s. So it was created before we had the internet in everybody's home and in their phone. And so, making those two worlds mesh makes my head hurt a lot. It's going to be interesting when they finally overhaul some of these laws and add in some new provisions to account for the fact that we have lives that are basically lived online. And what does that mean? And I think it's going to include a shift to more of a national focus, because before there was a lot of things, with the exception of things like patent and copyright, which are federal law, a lot of the other laws are based on state law. Well, when you're dealing in a digital world, it doesn't matter as much anymore where each person is. But figuring out what law applies when you have one person in California and one person in New York, and they're fighting about something on the internet, you may have to look at, okay, what's the law in California? What's the law in New York? What's the law where the server is?
Exactly. I was just going to bring that up.
and figure out how do we untangle this mess. So I think part of it's going to be hopefully a shift to more national laws. I know if anyone's anti-government, I'm sorry. It's a necessity. I mean, really more global laws would be better. But that's just how we communicate.
Yeah, and even like you brought up a very good point about global law. So my spouse, she's an author. And she was going through, she's actually an author. She's a crochet designer, and she was going for magazines, and she said, hey, here's magazines, and here's the work that I've done here, and it's being republished in Russia, and there's pretty much nothing we can do about it.
Basically, no. Once it gets outside the U.S., unless the other country is willing to work with you, it's not that you couldn't sue, but let's say you file a lawsuit here in the U.S. against a Russian company. How are you going to find them in Russia to get them served? And what's the likelihood, even if you get them served, that they're going to show up? And it's just, it's a pain in the ass when you're dealing with overseas situations a lot of times. So yeah, a lot of times I can tell people like, okay, we can pursue this, but chances of you getting the outcome you want is lower because of these barriers over country lines.
So bringing it back to the United States, so for somebody who has a blog or somebody who has videos that they've done, what can they do to protect themselves from a legal standpoint, or at least it may not prevent somebody from stealing your content, but what can make it squeaky much easier for you to work with that in the future?
And that's a challenging question because it's if someone is gung ho on stealing your stuff, they might do it no matter what you do, and no matter how advanced we are in trying to prevent things like copyright infringement, people are going to do it. So decide up front how you want to react when someone steals your content. Now, if you're talking about something that's just on your own web page, you can add in software that prevents people from like right clicking and copy and pasting and make it harder. But when they make something idiot proof, they just make a better idiot. So, it still could get stolen. So just be aware. One thing I always do is watch my analytics on my sites. So if somebody unfamiliar is linking to me, that gives me a heads up that either someone's talking about me, talking about a topic, or is stealing my stuff. And they don't know because a lot of people think that they can steal whatever they want from another site, whether that's, a Google image search results or someone else's page, use it and just give an attribution and a link back. They think that that's all they have to do to be in the clear. And what they've really done is just committed infringement and told you about it. Okay. So I tell people always respond when you see that happen, so that whether it's, and it could be, hey, you said maybe it's like a little high school kid, and they really did think they were in the right. Yeah. So then you educate them. Maybe you grant them a license and say, you do it again, I'm going to DMCA you. Because for a lot of people, it's not worth it to file a copyright infringement claim. Well,
what would it cost for somebody to file a copyright infringement claim?
I mean, estimated. I mean, if you are in litigation, my coworker down the hall says plan on spending $5,000 to $10,000 a month on litigation. So if you're just starting with sending a demand letter, you're looking at a couple $100, maybe a couple $1,000. But yeah, if you actually open litigation, one, you have to be in it for the long haul. I just saw a case that's finally was resolved after 8 years. So do you really want to fight for 8 years over something? And if you win, can you collect? Because remember, as loving and wonderful as lawyers are, most of us don't work for free. So if we can't, and depending on their situation, it may be one where the other side isn't responsible for your legal fees. So do you really want to pay your lawyer hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially to be right and not collect anything at the end? Or not collect and you'll end up being out money versus making money. So I usually ask people at the beginning of one of these situations, how do you want this to end? And that will give me an indicator of of what their motivation is, what result are they looking for, and then when I explain the process to them, it'll help them evaluate, is what I want actually a possibility for me?
Yeah. So it seems like the saying is still true. At the end, only the lawyers will still win.
God, I hate that phrase, but
I mean, for somebody who's Joe Schmo, if you put up a great blog, or even, I mean, one of the things that I've heard of happening right now is people who are doing videos on Periscope. There's companies out there, there's people out there who scrape those videos, they record them, and then upload to YouTube as their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully, I mean, you can always send things like a DMCA. And I know, like with YouTube, if a user gets so many takedown notices, they'll disable their channel.
Okay.
So you can do things like that. But yeah, you have to be ready for that to happen. And yeah, I was worked with a blog that I write for on a regular basis. They were being scraped, and they said, "Hey, can you help us with this?" And I started out by pointing them to the scraper's web host and said, start with them. If they don't respond, then, that's when you call a lawyer and start paying bucks. But, you can do a lot, through self-help.
And it seems like companies are being more receptive to that. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, you don't want to, I'm sure Google doesn't want to be on the hook for the fact that they got notices from you as the user that my content is being stolen and we're doing nothing about it, because that would be, you can get money from Google.
You can. And yeah, a lot of places are receptive. But if let's say you're dealing with a company that's out of Lithuania. Yeah. Maybe if they ignore you, you might have a legal claim against them, but are you going to go after them?
I guess it goes back to, there's a difference between being right and being effective.
Yeah. And that's sometimes what you have to look at is, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy?
So we had a question in chat. So what is flash mob law?
All right. So you are obviously familiar with a little site called YouTube, where there are plenty of videos of people dancing in the street or riding the subway in their underpants, or, pillow fights or whatever. Those are all flash mobs. I work as a flash mob organizer here in Phoenix with Improv AZ, but I'm also a flash mob lawyer for hire for other groups to help them plan their shenanigans so that when they do what they do, they're not setting themselves up to get sued or arrested after the fact.
Okay.
Or arrested.
How involved, I mean, to some people, I mean, if you're participating, I'm sure it's fun. If you're the business owner, it's probably a nuisance.
Depending on where you are and what you're doing, that is something you have to think about, is where do you want to pull off this stunt? And if you are on private property, have you just set yourself up to get busted for trespassing or something along those lines, versus being in a public park, open to the public, less likely to get in trouble in that sense.
Okay. So if somebody's setting up a flash mob, what are the couple of things that they should be thinking about?
So I look at, okay, what do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? Whose rules apply, whether it's like a malls or a city or a state. What might you be accused of doing wrong? So think of what crotchety old women might accuse you of doing wrong. And then what might you actually be doing wrong, so that if the cops show up, you can articulate why what you're doing is okay, if you choose to talk to them, because you do have the right to remain silent. So, and then inform and then pass that information on to your participants properly and remind them that they are responsible for their own actions. Yeah. And then if you're dealing with an issue where you're using like music or choreography that someone else owns, there may be some intellectual property issues there. But yeah, you just kind of got to think it all the way through, because, just because someone doesn't like what you're doing, doesn't mean you did anything wrong. So
absolutely.
It's kind of funny. You brought that question up. My friend was just posting a memory. 2 years ago, my friends and I did what we called the Zombathalon, where we dressed up as zombies
Ooh, zombies are always good.
Zombies are always good. Put ourselves on a popular running trail in Phoenix and scared runners. And so we had to think about like, okay,
that's awesome.
It was pretty awesome. And it was like 6:30 in the morning because in Phoenix it's still pretty warm here. So we had to think like, okay, like don't touch anybody because that's called assault. Especially when you're wearing makeup, you may also have property damage if you get your fake blood on someone's $200 running shirt. I mean, don't scare anybody in such a way that they fall into the river. Because of course we picked a running trail next to our canal, and things like that. Like, okay, and if the cops show up, just disperse. So things like that. The cops didn't show up. We had a great time. Other people seemed to enjoy us. So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I guess as long as nobody's getting hurt, that it's okay.
In general, yeah. If you go into it with the spirit of, okay, we're having fun, we're not trying to hurt anybody, we're trying to actually be respectful, it's a good chance you're going to be okay, but not a guarantee.
As opposed to, I'm sure you don't condone like the videos that you see of flash mobs running into 7-Eleven stores and just breaking everything down. So I guess those are just mobs, not flash mobs.
Yeah, no, that's not a flash mob. That's just called a riot. Group shoplifting, that's not a flash mob. If you have criminal intent, you're already outside the realm of flash mob.
Well, so you brought up a good point. I mean, like, and we're jacking this Blab. I mean, you said intent. I mean, you can, if you're scheduling a flash mob event, something that's really, really cool, I mean, there's intent that you're doing something good. Yeah. But at what point, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the rioters who go into those stores and do cause property damage, did they have intent of actually doing that? Or was it just groupthink and one person starts it and then everything goes to hell in a handbasket?
As far as I know, anytime it's involved like a 7-Eleven or where things are being destroyed and stolen, yeah, they were going in there to cause havoc versus, hey, we're going to dance at a mall and we didn't understand that was trespassing, or something like that. Or, hey, we're going to do this, topless protest to promote breastfeeding, but the laws of this city are backwards and they don't allow that, and we just committed indecent exposure. And by inviting our friends to participate, we also probably just committed conspiracy and solicitation.
Wow. Oops. Adds up.
It does, unfortunately. So, yeah.
So I guess to kind of bring it back, so let's say you have those awesome flash mob events. You took the video of it, you put it up, you monetized it, and now you're the owner of these assets. What are some of the 2 or 3 things, to wrap up the conversations, that everybody should be doing to protect themselves and to just kind of make their digital estate plan more effective?
So if this is something you do on a regular basis, there are plenty of YouTubers that like this is part of this is how they make their money. That's when you definitely want to form some type of business entity to protect yourself, and have all the documents in place, including a plan for what happens when the owner of the company dies, who inherits all that. Otherwise, you want to have something in your estate plan about who will own the copyright in that channel, who gets the royalties. So when the money's coming in, because I'm assuming that account is probably may just be connected to a bank account. Yeah. Well, so you want to make sure you get your ducks in a row, contact, in this case, YouTube, Google, to see, okay, we probably have to show the will to say this person died. So we're going to be closing this bank account soon, but but his nephew is now the copyright holder. We need to put his bank account on it or something, figure all that out, get those ducks in a row before you shut down the bank account, because it may be hard to undo it later. Yeah. And if you're talking about like a website, make sure that you have all those login information, make sure your digital executor knows how to access all that. If anything is on auto pay, like certain types of software, or when you have to renew your hosting, make sure that you change the credit cards to the new owners so that you don't just get an error message and turn your site off. And just kind of think all those little things through, like, okay, what do I want to have happen to my digital life when I die? Who's going to control it? Who's going to own it? If there's money to be made, who gets it?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that was really, really good. Ruth, I appreciate your time. Thanks for answering a couple of the questions and going a little bit more on a tangent, but it was actually very, very good and educational.
My pleasure.
So thank you all. Once again, this will be recorded, so it's going to be available for you to view at your leisure. And if you access the link directly through Blab, you can actually still leave comments right in there. Ruth, if you want to add your how do people find you, you can leave it in the comments, or you can actually say it right here in the video.
Sure, you can always find me. I'm at RB Carter on Twitter. Probably the easiest way to remember to find me online is geeklawfirm.com. That'll provide you links to all of my social media platforms. I blog every week at geeklawfirm.com, undeniableruth.com, and Carter Law Firm also has a YouTube channel.
There we go. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And thanks for joining. Till next time. And on Thursday is going to be our next Blab, which is going to be our scheduled market update and economic updates video call. All right. Thank you all.
Yay.